My name is Andrew Penner. I'm the president of the AEE Canada East chapter, and we're really happy to welcome you to this morning's webinar, which focuses on the anatomy of a low carbon economy innovator. Sponsors are so important to chapters like ours. They enable us to fulfill our mission financially, and through their support, they confirm our relevance and provide credibility. They expose our members to new ideas and ways of thinking, and they help to grow our network and our influence. Um, you can see on the screen here, this is the stable of sponsors, corporate sponsors that we have for 2023. We're really excited to have them all on board. If you happen to see your company's logo there, pat yourself on the back, I suppose. If you don't and you think it should be there, you can always reach out to us. We're always happy to have new partners at the table. As a chapter of the Association of Energy Engineers, of course, the AEE Canada East looks to espouse the mission and values of AEE. So we are the local expression of AEE, and for some, represent their window into the international organization. So as an association, it was founded in 1977, and it has grown to include more than 18,000 members across over 100 countries and has more than 90 chapters similar to ours. Without further ado, I'm going to give Rod a quick intro, but it's going to be very brief. So interestingly, I found out this morning that Rod's background is actually in chemistry. So he's a scientist by education, and his career path has taken him up and down, in and out, and he's landed in the renewable energy world, innovating around that space. I found out that he has, what's driven him to renewables and to, working to battle climate change is really founded in his upbringing. So I will stop talking and I will let Rod take over the show from here on out. So welcome, Rod. You can share your screen whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Andrew, for introducing me. So I'm looking forward to being able to present a little bit more about my company and our journey here today. As Andrew said, I'm quite good with interruptions, if they call them that, or just a conversation. I like the conversation aspect of presentations. So, well, let's get into it. What I'm doing is I'm making a product we call Sparklad. It's a little bit different. A lot of people kind of ask me, like, why siding, for example. Now, and I get into that later, but here's our pilot installation. It's the siding to the side of the cabinet on the garage. and you'll see, the very top is the traditional building products, and there's rooftop PV. It's a combined system. How does our product work? Really, it's a lot like a lot of photovoltaic products out there. It has monosilicon PV cells. We change it up a little bit in that we make a composite with the PV embedded within it. And part of our composite has a surface material that has all these cones and concave and convex surfaces. And that helps guide the light toward the cell, especially for a vertical install. And it needs that feature. And then, of course, we take that composite, combine it to a backing, connect up the electronics, seal it up. And of course, we have a QA that would be tested and rate the panel. Not all cells actually perform the same, so it ends up having different ratings. And we're going to perhaps develop that into different rated products eventually. And to the right top there, there's a partial install of our pilot. You can see that it installs a lot like regular building products. And that's a feature of our system. It doesn't require any special backing or anything. It's another building product. We tried deliberately to make our product very easy to install. It's light, 5 pounds. It installs row on row, a lot like regular siding products. And it has that textured surface to improve performance, but also to minimize reflection, so it behaves more like a building product on the wall. The only real difference between installing our product and other products, and other siding products, is you connect a wire. And there's a little bit of preparatory work with regard to some of the conduit behind the scenes. One feature is that texture surface actually increases safety. one of the things that is an issue with regular PV modules is it does reflect light strongly, and you get that sunspot. They do have a PMMA film that has these small cones on it to reduce the reflection, but you still get sunspots. And you can see in this picture here, I made a little panel with the tempered glass instead of our surface material. And you can see a little bit of a cloud there. It's a very sharp image. And of course, a little bit of an upside down tree there. That same cloud doesn't show up on our side of the product. I tried to line it up where the cloud was sort of halfway. And it's a more diffuse. So as the image to the right kind of illustrates, it creates more of a wider diffuse reflection as opposed to a sharp sunspot. And that means it's safe around homes and kids, and it's safe near airports, is unique. We do have tech. I find that some people go, oh, it's just another, simple product, whatever. But we do have tech involved in our product. We what I like to call my end-to-end IP. We have patents on the composite. We have patents on the product itself, and we're working on more patents related to how it may be installed and manufactured, and we're extending some patents into the materials. And beyond that, we do have some trade secrets involved. We're not actually done innovating yet. We're looking to develop further technologies and further product lines, for example. One thing I found in our product is we were deliberately avoiding trying to make it expensive. We're deliberately avoiding trying to over-engineer the product. We could add colored films and textured films and polarized films, but these things can add the cost up 20, 30, 40, 60% more, simply because those films are highly engineered, micro-engineered, whatever, and they're expensive. We're looking for more cost-effective solutions for that. And it's summed up well by a client that we were talking to down in the States. It's a really good quote. It says, the affordable housing community has been underserved in technology. Most of the products you see being introduced are all these very expensive, highly engineered products, and there's not a lot on the market for entry-level basic products other than the PV module. And oh, there it goes. So what we're trying to find is the right balance between how much PV siding and how much rooftop PV might be on a building. Really what we envision is most homes are going to require some rooftop PV to reach the net zero. It's sort of unavoidable in my view. And so how do you find the right kind of balance, the right kind of system that might actually serve our system best? And one thing that we found was an advertising point perhaps is our product produces more of a levelized amount of energy. In this example here, we have a 40-60 split of rooftop versus our PV siding. And of course, it's situation specific, but it's meant to illustrate a point of how, if you take a look at the combined system, the winter trough is much less of a trough. You get more production through the winter, and the summer peak is much less of a peak. And when you're talking about hydro and their denial of new installations because they can't manage that peak power, they have to plan for the maximum amount of grid power. It makes it expensive. The grid levelized approach here actually makes more sense on a community level. And again, you still run your heaters in the winter, so a lot of electric heating out there. So it's there might be a summer peak, but at the same time, it's not as extreme, so easier to manage. In terms of carbon embodiment, based on my calculations, and I am not an expert in this, I'd like to actually find someone who can actually do a proper job at this, but I calculated all and kind of, I guess, trying to cross off those things of the equation that might equate to each other. And what it all boils down to for me is the temperatures involved in creating the tempered glass and the extruded aluminum in the traditional solar PV modules compared to our product. Now, it may not be completely obvious, but our product does not have glass in it. It actually has a form of plastic that is has the same light transmissivity as tempered glass, and it has the same UV stability as glass. So there's no disadvantage to the system using the material. And
Hey, Ron, I've got a quick question for you
yeah.
about the material. So, the choice to go with a plastic composite rather than a tempered glass, does that impact durability, especially in cold climates?
Well, the individual material we have has been tested in the industry for well over 20 years, and it's completely durable. So no, um, it was literally invented about 20 years ago, and so it's only had 20 years of testing. So, but it's being tested on an ongoing basis. It should
Great.
last. And actually, it was created for an entirely different industry. We've co-opted it for what we're doing. But anyway, what else? So yeah, so if I compare how much energy goes into creating regular PV modules and how much energy goes into creating our product, and I, that's an interesting question too. I'll circle back to that, because one of the reasons we wanted to find plastics is because we wanted to make the product more recyclable. We wanted to be able to have a product that's recyclable with existing recycling infrastructure. I didn't really have a slide on that, but that was one of the goals of our research, was trying to figure out how to make it easily recyclable. So the energy going into making our product is less. We should have a lower carbon embodiment. I estimate around 40% lower. That's assuming it's all brand new materials too. If we start talking about recycled materials, and I don't know if we can, but if we started talking about recycled materials, our value would be lower. So that's kind of a neat thing too. As far as certification, of course, all building products need to have certification. All electrical components and such do. With our pilot, we went through a bit of a discovery journey, in trying to get it done. The e-safe inspector and the electrician we hired, really they're concerned about the CSA certification, which is on the inverter. We use CSA certified inverters, and all the electronics and cables, and you name it, are all UL or CSA certified. The only difference is our product itself. And the conclusion out of that was, we should probably get a field inspection done. So we hired QPS to do that. And after a fair bit of back and forth, they said we didn't need one, because it actually met the electrical code by exception. And I list the codes here. So it came down to a couple, one code saying you can't do it unless, and then the unless part spoke about 64210, about really I need to use solar cables and MC4 connectors. So after I explained that to them, they said, no, you don't need a field inspection, so it's all good. That said, when I talk to electricians and related to further installations, it keeps coming back, and some of the quotes I've had for installing the product are a little bit exorbitant because of that. Therefore, it makes sense to get the UL/ULC certification. We've hired Intratech to do that. And of course, they're going to also do the building product testing. So when I talk to architects, for example, they want to see those ratings, make it easy to implement, kind of thing. So we're going to do that just in time. So more about our pilot installation. And then I'll derail my own presentation here, because a lot of times I get questions about what inspired me to do this and why PV siding. These are the kind of common questions I get. And so I'll answer the second question first. We actually never planned to do PV siding initially. It was a rooftop product we started with. And of course, I've never created a startup before. So we went to Invest Ottawa to validate our product and business idea. And they always say the same thing, and that you need to talk to customers, right? And shortly thereafter, we approached Algonquin College, because we had no idea how to make a building product. We had no idea how to do prototyping and things like that. It was a learning curve for me. So we learned a lot about product development through those projects at colleges. But really, what started our whole thing was the microfit program. I would thought, hey, cool, let's get this. And I brought it home and started a dinner conversation with my spouse about it. And I got a rather unexpected response. Um, she's not a big fan. We'll just say that. She did not like and actually would refuse to live in a building with solar panels on it. And I, of course, through Invest Ottawa, they're encouraging me to talk to people. And I found out the opinion is pretty common. It's a vast majority of people not really a fan of the look of solar panels on a house. So, a couple of weeks later, I brought it up again. And this time, not a surprise because I was already prepared to hear negative feedback. But I wanted to dive into this subject because of the conversations I was having with others as well. And I learned it gives that industrial look, and there's my wife described it as the white picket fence idea. Girls grow up and looking at these beautiful homes and movies and shows, and that these white picket fence, it's all idealistic and whatnot. They don't want to live in a house that they can't be proud of. And this is, again, I continue to talk to people, and I found that curb appeal issue, it really matters. Homes need to look attractive, and it's a vast majority. Of course, this led to a third conversation. Yes, I waited a couple weeks again, but maybe because of my gluten for punishment, I asked again about it, and this was the challenge I got. She came up with a comment about technology, and in this day and age, there has to be a better solution out there. And she knows what I do for a career. She's seen, over the years, we've been married a long time. She knows what I do for a career. And she says, well, Rod, figure it out. Like, why can't you do this kind of thing? And fair enough. I thought for a few minutes and I thought, you're right. The technology exists to do a different job, a better job, maybe something different. So that's what started it. And so when I was researching the industry, I was always following it because I've always been a bit of a green enthusiast. As Andrew said earlier, my dad was involved in building and building science, and he was, he built homes. He was a builder, and he's always interested in green technology and efficiency and stuff. So I kind of had it ingrained in me. But so I started looking into photovoltaic products and their benefits and why some failed and why some didn't fail and which ones are actually getting to market and which ones are faltering. And a couple of these examples stand out to me. Like the Dow product, when it first came out, it used this SIGS PV material, which contained arsenic, heavy metals, and selenium, rare earth elements, and really cool in the lab, 46% efficiency. But in real life, you're lucky to get 7% out of it. It had a real problem with heating. And of course, you put the product on a roof, a lot of heat. You can't avoid it. You need to have a cooler or something to kind of figure that out. Interestingly enough, I learned just a few days ago that there's a new company that bought Dow's old technology. They reinvented it with silicon cells and are trying to release it. And so we'll see where that goes. Now, Tesla created a different type of failure / problem. Now, it may be arguable that Tesla has failed, but when I'm looking at the industry and I see GAF introduce a new roofing product that's photovoltaic, and I see them having more installations in 1 year, the entire lifetime of all the Tesla products being installed over their lifetime, Tesla's not going anywhere, and it's likely to be phased out because it's not cost competitive at all. But the real reason for failure was they had a very over-engineered and over-complicated installation. So their product might be a little bit pricey, but their installation was even pricier, which made their cost-benefit ratio like non-existent. And the root problem with both of these issues or products is they're not actually BIPV. They're not building integrated PV. They're attached. They look integrated, but they're not. They're attached. And that's the advantage GAF has because it actually is replacing the rooftop system. It's a building certified roofing system. So we discovered 3 themes. The product is first and foremost an energy system. It needs to be high efficiency for a building. There's no way around it. You might be able to get away with a low efficiency in a field because there's lots of cooling, but you can't on a building. and it needs to replace the building product. Consumers have seen enough of these products being released that they just think it needs to be dual purpose now. And if you don't have a dual purpose product, it's not going anywhere. And the third, it needs to be cost effective. It needs to be an inexpensive system, a low cost per watt. And I emphasize the word system because it's not just the product, it's the installation, it's the inverters, it's the entire system cost. Because I've heard too many complaints from consumers who've bought onto a system about how inexpensive PV modules are, only to get a surprise price tag at the end of $26,000, and think they had the expectation it might cost 6 or even 8. That's bad sales. There has, maybe some companies a little bit more honest or whatever, or forthcoming, but anyway, it needs to be inexpensive in the end because that's what the consumer gets. The reason we landed on siding, the first question, or I guess the part of the question is kind of rooted in why this question of net zero and how there's an impression it's solved. You see a lot of news about the here's another net zero building, and it's there's all these successes, it's being advertised through the Home Building Associations Canada otherwise. But I see two issues happening. One, a lot of these buildings are being made more expensive than they could be with flat roofs. I talk to builders all the time because I'm a member of the local Home Building Association. And I heard just the other day that those structural beams and the extra structure in those homes that require a flat roof because of load bearing issues, it can bump the price up of the house by a couple $100,000. And the structural beams themselves just jumped up by 100% in value. They doubled in price overnight in the last few weeks. So that's a challenge. How do you make a net zero home if you have to absorb a couple $100,000 extra costs? And the second issue is that curb appeal issue comes back. You see a lot of builders designing the houses in a manner where the panels are hidden from view. You can't see them from the curb. You have to kind of deliberately go looking around and try to find them, which works for larger footprint homes. Now, these two examples, the left one was a $1.6 million home. Granted, it was built in a little bit more of an expensive area in Ontario here. The second one was 1.1 million, but it was actually about 40 minutes north of Guelph, in the middle of kind of a bedroom community, I guess, to get away from the land prices. But all the same, I'm not sure of a lot of people who can afford $1 million home as a first home. That's not the bulk of the home buyers out there. And that's the crux of the problem. Not everybody can afford a $1.6 million home. In fact, most consumers are struggling to afford a $400,000 to $600,000 mortgage, especially with the interest rate rise recently. And that's leading to a lot of the homes, the bulk of the homes, being small yards, small footprints, small spaces. And I've seen many times in our CAN reports of the building stock out there, and at least half are these new buildings and existing infrastructure are low-rise MURBs, row homes, semi-detached, small condos. This entire sector actually needs a solution because the existing technology doesn't quite do. And the problem's getting worse. Again, I mentioned about the interest rates rising and the more drive toward affordable homes. The impact is the housing size, like the footprint of entry-level homes, are actually getting smaller, which makes the roof space smaller. And the average size of these large singles is actually getting larger because there's a divide happening, and it's I guess I don't know, expanding, if that's the right word. Now here's an advantage of our product. If we look at the competitive cost of what our product installs at and what we get for a cost per watt, our product becomes very inexpensive, because it replaces the siding that you have to install anyway. The labor used to install the siding, well, you have to do anyway, whether it's our product or another siding product. And you replace part of the PV system on the roof with a more effective solution. Now, part of the system on the roof makes sense because it's well orientated and everything else like that. But there's usually, to get to net zero, there's usually part of the system that's installed in a less than ideal location spot, and you have some inefficiency because of that. Well, remove that extra 20, 30%, put it on the wall, and you have a more effective system overall. So when we take a look at these differential costs, our system becomes very affordable. And actually, it's kind of more in line with what we see advertised in these large open field installations with these really low cost PV materials. It makes the overall system much more cost effective, and it's levelized. And there's lots of advantages around adopting this. And where we see our main product fit, of course, I've kind of already alluded to this, but it's really the entry level singles that they're taller, they're on a smaller footprint, land footprint. Townhomes, of course, to the right, where we have a part of the system, added in, again, with some rooftop, and small condos to the bottom left. Now, I have to say, design matters. And as our demo installation or pilot installation kind of illustrated, we put a small strip of regular building product on the very top couple of feet. And if you take a look at the image on the top right, the sun exposure, because of the roof line, is always limited in those first few feet. So from an architectural point of view, what we'd want to kind of encourage is having some kind of feature where it's, the 2/3 window height kind of thing has this bar in it, and you kind of line up a little bit of a molding there to kind of house and frame. You can do it in a manner that makes it look attractive, but to have our product in the sunnier area, and of course, how the building is oriented matters as well. And so I have two goals here. I want the installations to look nice. It needs to be a nice accent. It needs to be designed in well, and you can do it wrong. And I have said no to a number of ideas about things because I don't want the product to roll out and look bad. I want it to create a good first impression. So I'm looking for projects that are willing to illustrate the benefit of the product rather than its weakness. And I say that because every product has good and bad. There's never a 100% solution everywhere. And now, changing gears back to our pilot. Of course, most projects start with an idea. In this case, what we did is we remodeled this existing cabinet that houses the electrical meters as part of what do you call it, a row home. It's a single level row home that's kind of spread out for a retirement community. And so we remodeled the cabinet that covers these electrical meters, and the three middle doors were designed to be open so that the technician could still come in and read the meters. And just like anything, there's a construction phase, and we prepare the site. We get a carpenter, we get an electrical person, the carpenter builds the walls, whatever, and the electrician runs the wires. Now, we made a choice of putting the wires kind of coming out where the systems might connect, but in hindsight, what we would probably want to do is run the cables through the roof line or maybe through the flooring area, depending on where it's installed. If it's installed on the second level above the bush line, we'd probably want to go through the roof and then have the wires come down the chase like a regular traditional PV system. And they'd already have wires coming down there, so why not tie in? But yeah, if it was more of a ground level, then maybe the floorboards would be a better choice for where to run the wires. But really, that's an electrician's choice. It's their job to figure out how to do electrical wiring and stuff and conduit. Our product certification begins and ends with our product. The rest is all UL and building code and electrical code. Of course, just like regular electrical systems, we have inverters, we have breakers. We follow the NRCan guidance to install the system, the PV or BIPV system, and it's all kind of standard. And in the end, we build it one section at a time, just like regular siding, row on row, section on section, and we configure the panels as a series as we're building the wall. And they would lead into the different inverters and things like that. One thing that's interesting is we can tie into any system, an existing system, a different inverter system. It's really doesn't matter. It's just a matter of how we decide to configure the interconnections between the individual panels and how we align. We can do a series, we can do a series and parallel, we can do combinations. Really, it comes down to what can the inverter handle and where's the inverter's sweet spot for efficiency. Of course, we're a startup and we're in a business development phase right now. We've got a few customers doing pilots and we've got some more customers lined up, but we're really looking to build out and get to that point where we can develop our manufacturing system, get our certifications, and make it a commercial product. We're kind of approaching the stage of business development where we want to kind of pass this next hurdle, this next milestone of having a properly certified but also commercial product. And to that end, we're looking for letters of intent to purchase, small deposit, $250 kind of thing, and you have a project idea that might happen in the next 18, 24 months kind of thing. So we're talking to a few people, and we're going to be using those LOIs as a manner to secure finance, some investors and some traditional finance as a way to get past this hurdle. Yeah, we're looking for opportunities. Anybody, we're trying to get our word out to anybody who sees a need for the product, wants to see it get to market, or maybe you have a project that's coming down the pipeline. And we want to implement our plan. And to our right here, I see, what our plan is. We've got some contracts put in place for an industrial design company, testing company, and robotics company. And we're engaged with Foresight Canada as part of their business development stream to kind of, try to scale, I guess. That's the stream. And of course, because they can help us get access to these grants that can help us along the way. I will mention this. I'll get to it later, actually. Yeah, we do have a few pilots started. We have some deposits paid, and we're working on some more deposits to have these pilots. I'm actually finding new customers. I got a couple more last week, actually. And so that's good. But one of the interesting thing is we're talking to building supply companies. We actually have a lead through this person who is a building supply person who has some influence with a larger company. So he's putting in place a bit of a purchase agreement through his company, but he's also advertising, and maybe we're going to get the larger company to place an order as well. Of course, all future supply, right? And we've got a few other persons that have approached us and said, what do we think about doing this? And so we've got a growing list of clients that are, committed, deposit paid, and a few others where the paperwork is en route, still waiting for a signature kind of thing. But based on all the, committed and projected sales, we're actually doing pretty good. As far as our pilot goes, we expect to have about a megawatt of product produced a year, which actually equates to about 33,000 of our little panels. We've sold about 18% of our forward production, and we have deals that are finalizing that comprise nearly 94% of our future production of the pilot. Now, the capacity issue I put at the bottom, times 3, we're projecting to run our pilot 8 hours a day, but recognizing that we can run it 24 hours a day if we really had to. So that's where the times 3 comes in. If we needed to scale up our volume of production, we could produce 3 megawatts a year rather than 1. Now we're going to use the pilot manufacturing system to develop an at-scale commercial system, which we project to be about a 10 megawatt production. And of course, we can build more of them. So we're pretty scalable that way. We can adjust to volume if we get the sales. I think there might be a question, Andrew. I saw something pop up. One thing that's interesting, I had a conversation I had the other day is we were talking about.
So there is, Rob. There is a question, and I was going to wait more towards the end because it wasn't really applicable at the moment, but it's around the electrician and installation. So you've described the product as being, kind of DIY, DIY safe, but then there's also requirements to have some electrical installation. So can you kind of unpack that a little bit more? Like what elements does the electrician have to do?
Well, the electrician, You'd work with the electrician to do their job, and that is to run the wires and conduit to the external wires, right? You get them to install the inverters and the breaker in the system so that from the exterior of the wall through the wall and into the inverter and the electrical panel, it's all according to NRCan code, and it's all according to the electrical code for PV systems. So that's not DIY. You hire an electrician for that. But the installation of the product itself, where you connect the wires and stuff like that, short of making sure the breaker's off when you're working on it, it is DIY. You don't necessarily have to have an electrician connecting wires. People are allowed to plug in their own electrical equipment. Now, do you need that final inspection? Yes, you do. You need to have an electrician test it out and verify it's all operating properly and stuff like that before you throw the breaker. And you may need an E-safe inspector. So there is involvement on a professional level, but a lot of the labor that goes into installing the product from a siding perspective, that's DIY. Like it's not complicated. What I kind of envision is you'd have a company doing it who maybe has an electrical background or construction background, like a contractor type, doing the construction, doing electrical, and then and they hire like a laborer type thing for the siding. That's similar to where what builders do right now. They hire contractors and they have laborers, right? So that's kind of the model we adopted. Hopefully that answers
Awesome.
the question. But
Yeah, I think it does. It
okay,
sounds like the product connectors are essentially plug and play.
well they are,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
They're MC4 connectors. When you plug them in, they go clip. They snip,
yeah.
so they're connected, and it's
Okay,
simple.
awesome.
No, yeah. So the conversation we had the other day about the Chio home, we visited the Chio home because again we're members of the Ottawa Home Building Association. We visited the Chio home as a bit of an official auto home building tour, and Panasonic was there because they provided all of the technology for the home, and including a PV system and a battery and energy recovery systems and things like that. Heat pump, obviously. And but it was interesting though, because Minto had kind of said we need to have the home of these properties. They avoided the flat roof because of the fence. They wanted to have a gabled roof because consumers actually prefer it. I heard from a customer not too long ago about the flat roof. They said, if I wanted to live in an apartment building, I would. It was an interesting comment. Because having the flat roof gives the home a different look. Not everybody likes that either. So they want to, a lot of homeowners want to see the gabled roof because it has that expected look. But where our conversation went on this was a future Chio home, while the 2024 version that's being built now is already defined. The 2025 version, which will be planned shortly, that just might contain our product or have our product featured on it, which would be interesting. But the main thing here of why they're actually talking to us about this is even Panasonic is a large company. They could not get that home to reach net zero. They got about 70% there. So when we're talking to Panasonic, and I've been talking to them as well, they're interested to learn more about our product. Let's just say that. And I see there's another question, but I'll let you jump in when you can. So as far as case studies, here's a couple project examples, different aspects of the project example. And I've talked about this or touched on this a few times, but you add that flat roof into a home and it increases the price substantially. And it makes it less affordable, substantially less affordable. And I put the payment in there. Like if you were buying a new home, you put a $250,000 deposit on it. What kind of payment would you have per month? $3,400 for a new home. I'd struggle to pay that, whereas you add that extra little bit of a flat roof and suddenly now you've got nearly $4,500 payment per month to afford the home. Yeah, that's not something I can do. Now, can you place more of a deposit than $250,000? I don't see a lot of entry level people having more than $250,000 for a deposit on a home. I just don't. So that's why I picked that number. And this example was a specific home builder in Edmonton I was talking to. They had a development where they were making a net zero home and they were making the traditional gabled roof home, same floor plan, same everything, except the roof structure was different. The one on the left cost $650,000. The one on the right cost $850,000. And it was mainly because of the flat roof and solar system. So what I was trying to explain to them was, if they do a bit of a blended system with my product and some rooftop, they can actually offer a much more cost competitive solution. And they're interested. They're talking to me. So the second example is townhomes. And this is where I think our real sweet spot is, because the average townhome doesn't actually consume a lot of energy compared to a single home. It's much less. And it's more about a 6 kilowatt consumption rather than closer to 8.5 or maybe 9. And if we do a blended system in this kind of scenario, it meets the demand quite well, and it's more levelized. To me, I see a lot of advantage. And the real advantage is the builder in that right now they do struggle because of the floor plan and the floor, footprint to achieve net zero on the rooftop. It's limited. So having a blended system, and obviously there's a lot more wall space available. So having a blended system just makes more sense. And the final example is small condo buildings. Now, you see in the chart on the bottom right, in terms of having a nice design and having some kind of power, even if I play with the numbers, I can get to about a 24 kilowatt spark lad system. It's not even close to the demand of power for that building. There needs to be more technology and more solution in that respect. And then I came across what Quattro Power made. They made these concentrator things for the roof of these kinds of buildings. So it would need this, and I don't know what kind of power this other system would produce, but these kinds of buildings need more technology. So it's a problem that is yet to be solved from my point of view. So I'll just, and I'll end with that. That's pretty much it. My last word, at its root, we're a technology company. We're looking to seek strategic partners to do the manufacturing, distribution, and such. We want to focus on developing new products and new technology. As I alluded to earlier, we started out as a rooftop maybe solution. We kind of pivoted at some point to maybe look at a cladding product when we were engaged with Algonquin College. But then because of our learning journey, we pivoted again to making a PV siding type product because of that fit, that fit to the MERB technology or the MERB community, it needing a solution. But our mission really is to develop a range of simple and effective solutions that achieve that balance between performance and aesthetics. When added as an accent, our product kind of, yes, if you look at it very closely, just like a lot of building products, it has some feature there. But if you kind of blend it in and look at it from the curb, it disappears as a PV material, and it starts to appear more like just a dark building material. And you can do it cost effectively, which is our goal. Now that's awesome. It. That's all I had prepared for you. So
that's awesome. So I'm going to bring that question that you identified earlier. So the person has asked if you could just elaborate a little bit on the return on investment that you would expect for the product. I think you had it in a table, or you had elements of it in a table, but they're looking for, what's the cost per square foot, for instance?
Yeah, I kind of went back to, I kind of just went to what the system costs are in terms of cost per watt. I didn't really, product cost. So our product itself is actually kind of pricey. It costs about $50 each, but the installation is quite inexpensive. And of course, you're already leveraging a lot of that labor and expense just building the house or renovating the house. I've had customers approach me for installing my product for the purpose of installing my product. And I tell them, here's the cost benefit. It doesn't work out. If you're doing a renovation anyway, and you're going to replace your siding anyway, and you're looking to do, rooftop solar or some kind of a PV system anyway, then our product makes sense. If you're wanting it just to put it on for other than generating electricity. And again, it's why I've said no to some of these projects. Is I'm not interested in doing a bad project. I'm interested in doing good projects. And the reason for that is right now at the level we're operating, I lose money every time I make a panel, and I'm not interested in losing money on a bad idea. I want projects that make sense, and for that, it's advertising, right? I need to have projects that make sense and would do well. So yeah, it's kind of a pricey product, but that's our current price as well. When we start talking about getting past this investment curve and developing the pilot facility, our costs start dropping. We can, as a product, become more cost competitive in the future. The one building supply company, we've priced things at the point where if we can get that investment, we can get past the curve, we provide them more of a bulk price, which drops. And if that's the interest, reach out, let's talk, because there's some room to play there.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, it sounds like your approach is considering the projects on life cycle costing basis, where you're taking in, you're looking at incremental cost as opposed to
Yeah.
to flat cost, which I think is pretty consistent with um, a lot of projects that are focusing on reducing carbon footprint, for instance. And it's a pretty common strategy.
Yeah. Well, you
So
have to, yeah, you have to really consider or recognize, I guess, you're talking about a 25-year lifetime. The sticker shock or that upfront price is a factor for sure. And yes, it does have an influence on the payback time, and it has an influence on your overall benefit. But it is a 25-year time frame most times. Like the PV material we use, we make it's a PV that's made by SunPower, like that's Maxion cells. They're guaranteeing their product for 25 years, and all we're doing is putting that cell in layers of glue.
right.
So their cells should work 25 years. We're not really playing with that technology. A lot of our individual components have already been tested and guaranteed to have longevity. So it's we're completely comfortable offering that 25-year warranty as well.
Excellent. Yes, excuse me, I have a question more related to playing in the startup and innovation space. So, from your observation, Rod, are are the is the investment community uh, kind of more focused on renewables and like decarbonization strategies? Like, do you see a difference in the conversation because your product is focused on greening?
I'll answer that with two sort of answers. One, a lot of the investment community is all about numbers. It doesn't really matter what fund it is. If the numbers aren't there and they go, oh, you're not scaling, oh, you're not this, oh, it's not a large enough investment. It's all, there's a lot of these gates there because they always have their sweet spot of what they're willing to do. And I understand all the reasons behind it, and it makes sense. But there's a lot of gating there. So when they talk about the job a startup entrepreneur has in terms of engaging with all these people who can potentially provide finance, it's honestly, it's a numbers game, and it's a battle. Now, the second answer there is we've been approached. Well, I got approached just last week, a new company going, hey, you're a green tech. We have money for green tech. We'd like to invest. Now, when I talk to them, I'll find out things like, oh, we don't invest in pre-seed. Or I'll find out things, oh, it's not enough. Our minimum investment's $5 million. Oh, it's, they find out these gating things because at the end, they're mathematicians, they're economists, and we don't fit their model of what they want to do. But there's lots of money for green technology. There's lots of money for green technology companies that are scaling. There's very little money anywhere for any company that's in the pre-seed sector. Even angel finance, it's a competitive thing. Here in Ottawa is a horrible community, actually. They're all into AI, software as a service, green technology that has a 10-year payback. Like it takes 10 years to get your money back out because it's a slow burn kind of technology. It's just not competitive into the investment landscape here. And that's why we're talking to investors actually in Vancouver and New York, because they're a lot more green technology focused, and there's an appetite there for investing more of a long-term gain. The climate tech is interesting in that it's a slow burn until it isn't, and then suddenly you have a huge payback. But you got to wait it out. And not all these companies have that model to invest into that.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting insight, and it might apply to people who have aspirations for for doing their own kind of startup and innovation play. So it's good to understand that you have to find you got to find maybe your own financing to get yourself
Yeah,
to scale up phase.
yeah, and
Interesting.
that's what we found. When we first approached Invest Ottawa, they gave us a lot of advice around pitching and things like that, and getting that startup finance in place, BDC bank and startup finance and everything else like that. But we followed their advice. We did a lot of work, and we basically found out the door is closed to climate tech. And so what we did is we re-engineered or pivoted our business to be bootstrapped. So my spouse and I, we've been investing regularly to get our product to market. And now that our product is entering the market as an MVP, not a fully commercial product, but as an MVP, I mean a minimal viable product, it is able to generate some sales and that traction they talk about. And I can leverage that to attract the investors now, which is why we're having the conversation, and is why I'm starting to actually respond to those people who have reached out. So
That's awesome. That's really great, Rod. Well, listen, thank you for sharing your story with us. It's a little bit of a departure from the plain technical webinars that we've had before, but I thought it was really important, especially as I think many of us observe in the market that there are people with new ideas that are entering the market all the time, and getting a bit of a view into how those people got to where they are, I think is really, really valuable. So thanks for making the time to speak
well,
to us this morning.
I'll add one last word to that too. As a community, you know, I applied for a grant from the government of Canada. It was an innovation grant, and they were targeting building technologies, clean tech building technologies that were at the TRL level, 7, 8 level. And then so I applied for it because, hey, perfect, we're better than that. We're not commercial yet. We're better than that. But in the end, they denied the application because we weren't fully certified. So I talked to them after. I said, what you're asking for doesn't exist. Who in their right mind is going to pay like $180,000 to certify a prototype? You don't certify prototypes, you certify your commercial product after you have a manufacturing system in place, because that's what they inspect. Like how it's a chicken egg problem. And yeah, I don't know. I think sometimes these grant application groups are kind of clueless. That's where having a partner, like an industry partner or some kind of a project partner who's willing to take on that risk, which is rare, but who's willing to take on that risk and plan for a backup plan if things don't fall together, is important. So as a community of engineers and whatnot, having some alternate goals, or maybe having some plans and backup plans in place to kind of help some of these companies get to market, it's kind of key, because the barriers are just too many, especially within a regulated market. You need to have a willing partner.